Welcome to this week's Planning Club. I'm thrilled to have David Girault from the Rio Grande Valley with us. So tonight we're going to be talking about how to grow your business. Not only a lot of business owners there, as many of you are on the call tonight, are out there growing your business organically. And it is a arduous process at times. It is difficult to grow your business through organic ways. But one of the other options that's available to business owners out there is to grow your business through acquisitions. And it is a process. It's a procedure that you go through. You definitely want legal advice. You definitely want financial advice. And when you're bringing in multiple businesses together, you want to also be able to integrate those businesses together so that you've got a well-oiled machine as you move forward. So I've asked David to join us tonight because he's actually going to go through a number of things with us tonight with regards to acquiring a business. Just so that we have full transparency, you know that's really important to me. David and I are actually business partners in another venture, and the business is called Buy and Build Advisors. You can find us at buyandbuildadvisors.com. And we actually help business owners from start to finish, from identifying businesses to acquiring the business to financing the business, doing all the legal due diligence, and then the integration of the businesses. So that's what Buy and Build Advisors does, and that's what we can do for business owners. So one of the things as business owners are looking at to buy businesses and to understand where they go through a lot of emotions out there, right? The big one is fear, right? How am I going to do this, right? But what is fear? False expectations appearing real. So what David is going to walk through tonight is some of those things, some of the things that you've got to look at, some of the things you've got to look for, some of the pitfalls that are out there, and how to spot those. So with that, David, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. And welcome everybody. Thank you all for letting me bend your ear for a bit this afternoon. Andrew and I have not coordinated the agenda specifically. We talked generally about it, but what I basically want to hit on are kind of four broad topics, and we'll definitely leave plenty of time for Q&A. So I want to hit on how to grow a business, and particularly how acquisitions fits into that. I want to talk about how to fund acquisitions, because I'm sure that's one of the questions is, well, how are we going to pay for all this? A little bit of the mechanics of the process of how acquiring a business works. And then I'll wrap up with some examples of businesses that you might be surprised to learn have grown through acquisition. And I'm going to throw in with that kind of a bonus second reason for why growth through acquisition, or a second bonus way to grow through acquisition, I guess is the way to put it. So if that sounds good, we'll jump right in. A little bit about me. I mean, Andrew has mentioned a bit about me, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of my background. I'm a South Texas native, born and bred. My biological family actually traces their roots back here on the Texas-Mexico border to about 100 years before there was a Texas-Mexico border. So I've been around South Texas all my life. Went to undergrad school up in San Antonio at Trinity University, have a degree in accounting, and then went to UT Law School after that. Came back here to the border, practiced law in McAllen. In the law firm for about 7-8 years. I did a combination of things, but a great deal of that was in small business representation, so corporate partnerships, limited partnerships. And then our firm represented a number of our regional banks here in the area, and so I've done complex lending transactions for those banks. All of their large and complicated deals came to our law firm. So did that for about 7-8 years, and then went off into the entrepreneurial world. Decided I wanted to be on the other side of the desk. I wanted to be telling the lawyers what to do, not being the lawyer being told what to do. So I went out into the entrepreneurial world. We grew an export company from startup to about $100 million in revenue. I sold my interest in that. went off into a franchise in retail wine stores. That was tons of fun, but not very profitable. And then from there, have been for probably about the last 10, 12 years, been doing consulting work, helping small businesses raise capital. So I've raised just shy of $100 million in the last 10 or 11 years, both in the form of bank financing and equity financing for small businesses. So I've been around the M&A space and specifically the financing space for most of my career. So let me jump right into kind of the first topic, and that is how to grow a business. You've all been working with Andrew, I think, for some time, so you've heard some different formulas for growing business. But the bottom line is the only way you can add to your revenue is either sell more stuff or sell it to more people, or a combination of those things. I mean, that's what's breaking down revenue too. It's the things you sell, whether it's a service or an item, and it's the people you sell it to. And you put those two things together, you have transactions. You want more transactions. So all of that, it distills down. We talk about leads, we talk about conversion, we talk about average dollar sale, we talk about number of transactions. But at the end of the day, it's more stuff and more people. So the question is, how can you do that organically? Y'all are already into that space. You're learning about marketing. You're learning about lead generation. What if, in addition to that organic process, you had kind of a instant way to grow, just like the Gatorade mix, just add water and all of a sudden you've got the drink. Well, that's what acquisitions can do. You can look at selling more of the same stuff to the same people. You can look at selling more of the same stuff to different people. You can look at selling different stuff to the same people. All just different combinations. If you look at an acquisition, let me give you an example. Let's say you've got a jewelry store there in Spring, outside of Houston. Well, we could talk about the marketing plans to get more people in the door, things like that. What if, in addition to that, you bought a second jewelry store, say in the Uptown Galleria area? Totally different market, right? People generally go to jewelry stores fairly close to where they live. So, second market in the greater Houston area, whole new set of customers. You're still selling jewelry, so same stuff, but you've got a built-in clientele of a second set of people to sell to. So that would be an acquisition option. Second acquisition option. Let's say we want to sell in the same market. We want to stay in Spring. We don't want to deal with traffic. So we're not going to go down to the Galleria. We're going to stay in Spring, but we want to sell different stuff to this same customer base in Spring. Well, it turns out there's a high-end luggage store for sale, right down the block. Well, we sell jewelry, but people who buy jewelry probably also buy high-end luggage, right? So we can sell different stuff to the same people. So we can buy that luggage store, we can increase revenue, we can offer more options for things that our existing customer base and their existing customer base can buy. Because the people that have been buying luggage might want jewelry. The people that have been buying jewelry might want luggage. So it gives us that cross-sell opportunity. So it's a great way to step out of the organic and make big jumps, right? Because maybe your jewelry store is doing $1 million, $2 million in top-line revenue. That luggage store is doing an $850,000 to $1 million in revenue. Well, hey, we've now just gotten our store to almost $3 million. So there's economies of scale as you get bigger. On top of that, they have a bookkeeper. You have a bookkeeper. Don't need two bookkeepers if you own the store, both stores. They have maybe they have a manager, you have a manager, but because the stores are in close proximity, that one manager could manage both stores. So there's all kinds of ways you could cut down. You can have one insurance policy. You can have one payroll service. business. There's all kinds of savings you can get from integrating those businesses. Same thing, even if you do the across town jewelry store option, there's still savings in overhead, and you've got that additional customer base. So that's really the big logic behind growing through acquisition. Is it is the single fastest way to add customers and add products to your business. Maybe there's even a more nuanced way, using the jewelry example. Maybe you have a great jewelry clientele, but there's one particular product line that all your customers are coming in and saying, hey, do you carry X? Do you carry Rolex watches? Do you carry David Yurman products? Well, no. There's a shop down the street that's got the exclusive on that in our market. You can buy that shop in order to buy the product line and bring that product line. So you're expanding your options for your customers. So that's kind of the logic behind line growth. And it works. That works in any industry, right? That works. I know. Dr. Eve, I think you're in the chiropractic space. You're in med spas. Okay, so you can do say there's a nail salon, or a hair salon, or a clothing boutique. You've got those same customers that want different products from you. You can bolt those together, and you can, number one, you can do that by starting up a clothing boutique. But I don't know about you. I don't know a lot about running clothing boutiques. So it's going to be hard, right? You're going to have to learn how to buy. You're going to have to learn. You have to figure out merchandising, all of that stuff. Or you can buy a business that's already successfully doing all that, who already has a team of people successfully doing that. And you can add that revenue stream. And all of a sudden, your customers that are coming into the med spa are now buying the athleisure wear or whatever it is that the boutique carries. So that's kind of the idea of why look at acquisitions as a way to grow, because it's really a way to, the organic is really a grind sometimes, a lot of it. It's just we're going to go from we're going to go from 100 customers to 105 customers, and then we're going to from 105 to 110, and we're going to 110 to 115. Or we can buy this location and add 200. So that's kind of the idea. So how do we pay for it? Well, the good news is that there are actually some really attractive financing options for how to do that. Now, I'm going to say, and there's a lot of speakers out there in the world who talk very negatively about debt. Your Dave Ramsey's, your Susie Orman's, whatever. They're talking about personal debt primarily, number one. Personal debt that doesn't produce anything for you. It's just a drain of cash flow. Business debt is a little bit different. I view business debt as like a really high quality steak. You don't give it to your toddler to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That would be overkill. A toddler eating a peanut butter sandwich doesn't need a steak knife. But if you're going to go to Morton's and have an anniversary dinner, your enjoyment of that anniversary dinner is dependent on your skill at actually using a steak knife. And my goal with businesses we work with is we want a business that dines at Morton's, right? So you got to know how to use the steak knife. So debt is that steak knife for a business. It's a tool to get to the way you want using leverage. There are tax advantages to having debt. It's actually the cheapest form of capital you can get, even in today's interest rate environment. Debt is still the cheapest form of capital there is. It's much less expensive to borrow money than it is to put in your own equity. So I want to hit on mainly in the small business category. The main tool is loans from the U.S. Small Business Administration or through the SBA at your local bank or national banks for that matter. The SBA 7A loan program is an amazing tool for business acquisitions. It's good for startups. You may have gotten an SBA loan to start your business or to grow your business. It's a fabulous tool for acquisitions. It is there's a piece of it that is tailor-made for acquisitions. Two things. Number one, if you're doing that same industry new customer base expansion, they will look at your tax return, look at the tax return of the business you're acquiring, and if they fall under the same NAICS code on the top of the tax return, there's a little box where your accountant plugs in your business activity code. Number one, if you've never paid attention to that, make sure your accountant has the right code. They'll look at if both businesses are in the same NAICS code, you can borrow 100% of the acquisition cost from the SBA. Yeah, you'll have to use your existing business as collateral. You'll have to tie the two together, and there's ways to manage that. But by doing that, you can finance 100% of the cost, $0 out of pocket, 10-year term. If there's real estate involved, 25-year term. So it can become a really attractive cash flow option. And here's a reason to grow that works on both ends. As businesses grow, the value of the business gets bigger because the business is bigger, right? I mean, a business that's generating $1 million of profit versus a business that's making $10 million of profit. Well, of course, 10 million is 10 times, so it's going to be worth 10 times more, right? Well, it's actually going to be more than 10 times more, because the bigger a business gets, once you get past up to about $1.5 million to $2 million in profit, a business will trade for somewhere between on average, 2.5 to 4 times profit. Once you get past that $2 million level, the value of the business goes to 3 to 5 times profit. Once you get past 5 to 10 million, it can go to 5 to 8 times profit. Netflix, I think yesterday was trading at 50 times profit. So the bigger the business gets, the more a buyer is willing to pay for it or is willing to value it at, because the bigger the business, the more predictable and the more stable the business. And ultimately, at the end of the day, a buyer is looking to buy a predictable stream of future cash flows. So the more predictable, the more stable, the more likely they are to pay a high multiple. So buying a small business, conversely, you buy at a lower multiple. So if you're buying a business at 3 times earnings, so let's say the business is making $500,000 a year, you're going to buy it at $1.5 million. And let's say you're doing the deal to finance it through SBA at 100%, but that $1.5 million gets paid back over 10 years. So setting aside interest for a second, I won't complicate the calculation. 1.5 million over 10 years is 150,000 a year, but it's making 500. So even if you don't grow it, you have added $350,000 a year positive cash flow for the next 10 years. And then after that, you've added 500,000, and you've spent not a dime of your own money. It's all been paid for by the profit of the business you bought. It sounds too good to be true, but it is. But you're saying, well, what if I want to do that, boutique clothing line next door to the med spa? That's in a different NAICS code. What do we do? Well, not to worry. The SBA this year just changed the rules. In fact, the new rules go into effect in 4 days. They go into effect August 1st. It used to be that if you were buying a business in a different classification, you could only finance 90%, which isn't the end of the world. 10% down is still a pretty good deal. But The rules now are that the remaining 10% can be comprised of a note from the seller with certain conditions. So you can go to the seller, you can say, hey, we're going to buy that boutique. We're going to pay you 90% at closing, and we're going to pay you the remaining 10% over time. The rules are it has to be on full standby, so no payments at all for 24 months, and then you can start paying. So sellers are aware of this, particularly if there's a broker involved, but sellers are usually willing to carry a seller note. I actually prefer deals to have a 20 to 30% seller note because that's a little bit of an insurance policy that the seller is going to be honest and forthcoming with everything, and the seller is going to have a vested interest in you succeeding. But at a minimum, with a 10% seller note, you can finance 90% through the SBA. So that's one way to finance it. You can finance deals with seller notes. You can buy businesses with the seller carrying 100% of the financing. I've seen that done. So there's option there. There's also conventional bank financing. You can get investors. It's intimidating because it's maybe not something you've done before, but it's really not that big of a stretch to work through it. So how does it work? How do you find a business? Well, one of the things the first place I would start is working with your management team, your advisors, your coach, and determine some things internally, and that is have a clear understanding of the industry trends in the industry you're in. Particularly if you're doing this as a growth strategy for an existing business. Know where the trends are, because you don't want to end up buying a business that really is heavily weighted in an area of your industry that isn't trending positive. There may be aspects that are upward, aspects that are flat, aspects that are not looking so good. So you want to make sure you're selecting a business that's on the upward side of the trend. So understanding your own industry trends, understanding your business's core competencies. What are the things that you all really do well as a business? And then combined with that, what's the strategic direction of your acquisitions? Are you looking to double down on those core competencies? Or are you looking to acquire new core competencies to augment the ones you already have? So making that strategic decision before you start. After that, then it's an outward-facing process. What is it you want to acquire? Do you want to acquire physical locations, or do you just want to acquire, people and tools? What type of infrastructure are you looking to acquire? What size business? And we can work with you. I can work with you through Andrew to help you understand the financial dynamics of that to help you pick on the size and what geography. There is, by the way, that caveat to the SBA piece, that same industry 100% financing has to be a relatively proximate geography. Here in Texas, if you have a business in Houston and you're looking to add one in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, that probably works. If you're saying maybe even in Houston, you go out, maybe you go to New Orleans, that would work. If you've got a business in Houston and you're buying one in New York, the SBA is going to question that about how much you can really manage both businesses under one unit. So baby steps, basically. Get one or two successful acquisitions more proximate under your belt. Prove that you can acquire and integrate. Then look at those further afield. By the way, the SBA cap currently is $5 million for the loan amount. And there's rumors that it's going to be raised to $10 million, but that hasn't happened yet. I believe that may actually require congressional action to happen. So, Lord knows when they're all going to get their act together to pass anything. So, don't know specifically. Right now, it's $5 million. But that's basically, so you decide on your what it is you want to buy, what desired infrastructure, size, geography, and then there's databases out there, and that's part of what we do. That's actually at Buy and Build Advisors. That's one of the services that we offer. is helping you define what that target business is, and then going out and sourcing deals, analyzing those deals and putting them in front of you to take a look at, setting up a meeting with the seller, talking to the seller, finding out more about business. We have a script we can walk you through, or we can do the interview with you sitting in to learn the key things we want to know about the business, to know if we've already identified that this target is within the target range of the desired infrastructure and things like that. Doesn't mean that it's a good business. I'm not a fan, and I don't think, particularly if we're looking at acquisition for growth, it would be a good idea to buy what we call turnaround situations, businesses that are faltering, businesses that are on a downward trend, unless there's something specific about that business that is of value to us independent of the business. So if they have, like, say there's a jewelry store that's kind of circling the drain, but it has that David Girault, license. Okay, well, then we may want to buy that because we're buying it for that license, not because of that status as a going concern. But as for the most part, we want to buy businesses that are healthy, that are trending in the right direction, that have a decent, decent books, decent numbers, decent procedures and processes, and decent company culture that's going to integrate in with ours. Once we've identified all that, we make an offer, we negotiate the offer, get a letter of intent in place, we do due diligence. So we dig into their finances, we dig into their legal situation. You've really already done the industry due diligence because A, you're in the industry, and B, we've done that thinking about the industry trends and company competencies and things like that. We source the financing, and that's something we help with as well. Like I said, that's my superpower is getting the money into the deal, and we get all of that lined up, and then. The real fun of this is you get to work with Andrew, because one of the pieces that Andrew leads up for us at Buy and Build Advisors is actually that integration piece. So getting things ready to go so that when you walk into that business on day one, the conversation you're going to have with the employees. You've got a plan for how that business is going to be integrated. You've got a process down for all of the things that are in the owner's head spinning around that aren't really documented, to convert those to processes and procedures. And you've got a plan to integrate and grow the business. So I want to wrap up. How are we doing on time, Andrew? Are we good? Okay. All right. So I want to dig in deeper. As I'd said, acquisition is really the single fastest way to increase revenue and earnings. There's some data out there, actually, in a presentation I was sitting in this afternoon. This actually comes from, I think it was from a study done by Accenture in the last couple of years. They've identified the key success factors in M&A. Number one key success factor contributes 48% to success: planning and executing the integration process is the number one most important success factor. Second most important success factor, 42%, conducting proper due diligence. Number three, understanding the cultural issues. Then number four, identifying, screening, and prioritizing targets. Number five, developing a M&A strategy early in the life of the business. Price and negotiation fall further down the list, amazingly enough. It really isn't about those things. It's about the planning. I think it's an old saying by a French general, but Eisenhower expanded on it. And he said, every great battle plan lasts until the first shot gets fired. But then after that, it's the exercise of planning that assures the success of it. It's not the plan itself, it's the exercise of it. and incidentally, by the way, in the same study, they looked at the likelihood of success of businesses that are acquired versus businesses that are started from scratch. Overall, over a 5-year period, and Andrew, you've probably spouted this to them before, but most startups, there's only like a 10% likelihood that a startup will make it to 5 years.
Of any kind?
Of any kind. It's lower than that. In restaurants, it's like 5%. It may be. But here's the interesting thing.
Come in one more time. I didn't understand what you said.
A business that you start from scratch, a startup business, if it's a solo or a small business startup, there's only a 10% likelihood that it will make it to 5 years.
Oh, wow.
90% of new businesses fail within the first 5 years, put it a different way.
Wow.
Now, if it's a venture capital backed startup, so mostly IT space and stuff like that, the odds go up to like 35, which still isn't great. Acquisitions, a new business owner who's never owned a business before, who walks in the door and acquires a business, has a 98% success rate.
Does it matter if that business has been in business for 5 years or more?
Yeah, the business, that's the idea, is you're looking for businesses that have been around at least 3 to 5 years or longer, so that they've already made it past, they've already survived the 90% fallout.
And can you expand a little bit about understanding cultural differences?
Sure.
What do we mean about that?
So, and I may punt a little bit to Andrew to tell a war story about a company he worked for once upon a time. But, you know, most businesses, particularly small businesses, the personality of the owner really is what sets the culture of the business. Most employees will do what you do, not what you say. So if they see the owner behaving a certain way, if they see things being acceptable to the owner, being tolerated by the owner, those will be the cultural patterns that develop in the company. So if your company has a employee culture of, you know, very open, very friendly, very collaborative, you know, all for one, one for all, Three Musketeers kind of culture, and you buy a company where the owner, and I've seen owners that do this, it does, for the life of me, I don't understand it, but I have a client that I've worked with for years. He, in the past, he's now decided it's not that good of a practice, but he would intentionally pit employees against one another. If he was looking at one to promote versus the other, he would set up scenarios where they had to go head to head, where they had to compete with one another. And it ends up producing, you know, a very cutthroat environment, it's about me, it's not about the company environment. So if you,
it's not a team.
It's not a team. Right. So if you've got a great team spirit in your company and you acquire a company that's not that way, it's going to be hard to bring those two companies together and have them function together as one unit. We had one of our buy and build clients that we were on, I was listening to, she had recorded an interview with the seller of a company that they have under contract to acquire, that we're doing the work on them for due diligence and legal and capital. And the owner of the business, we were talking about needing to bring in a general manager in that case. He said no less than 7 times, well, the real key is to just not be an ass. I mean, and so I'm wondering what in his past, because that is so important to him, that the manager just not be a jerk. But he's I mean, it's in rural Georgia, so he's a bit of a good old boy. We all work together as a team. We get along great, and if somebody comes in here who's a jerk, it just isn't gonna work. So
isn't that kind of subjective? What one person calls a jerk, somebody else just calls, a workhorse or someone who's conscientious or so.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, and Andrew, you can feel free to jump in here, but a lot of that is taking advantage of things like the DISC and Y tools that we have to just understand everybody. And understand how to, because it's a transition no matter what when there's an acquisition. Somebody said the other day to me, there's really no such thing as mergers; they're all acquisitions. There's a new boss and an old boss, no matter how it's framed. But understanding how people work together and how to message to them so that they are receptive to the change that's inevitable is really key.
So with all of these, with these acquisitions, I mean, we talked about the DISC and the Y, but do you go and ask the current owner to do a DISC and a Y on each of their employees so that you can tell whether or not they're going to be a better part of the team or not? Or, I mean, that sounds really expensive and time consuming for someone who's trying to sell the business.
So that's part of the integration process that we've built out is to do that. So it's the business post acquisition is who's paying for that. We're not asking the seller to pay for that out of their pocket, but it's a critical part of the process. And
but then the horse is already out of the barn, right? Because now you're trying to figure out the culture for something you've already bought. No.
So at the deep dive into the culture, yeah. I mean, it's happening as you integrate. The main thing is, you will get a glimpse under the hood before you even, in that initial buyer or seller interview. In most cases, I prefer to conduct those, in person at the business. The owner's going to go, well, nobody knows we're selling. Oh, that's fine. If you look me up on LinkedIn, I've got a background as a business coach and a consultant, just like Andrew. So, we can be brought in under the guise of something different happening initially as we walk through, and you can observe a lot just through a 15-20 minute walkthrough of the business of what the company culture looks like, and how people are interacting with one another. It's just like the old question about training, right? The one manager is saying, what if we spend all this money on training and then the people leave? And the other manager says, yeah, well, what if we don't spend any money on training and they stay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just a parting thought is that it was an interesting factoid that I learned just today, and I was going to share it. We all think of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, as a company that's been built by acquisition, right? I mean, Warren Buffett has not started anything in his life, including Berkshire Hathaway. He bought Berkshire Hathaway. So, yeah, he bought Berkshire Hathaway. It was actually a fabric milling company in New England when he bought it.
Berkshire Hathaway was?
Berkshire Hathaway, yeah. He bought it for.
You mean it was a company that made mattress covers? I mean, come on.
Yeah, they made fabric. They fabric mills. They sold
Okay.
off the fabric mills later on and kept the name. But Berkshire Hathaway, over the course of its entire time, and he bought it in 1963 or something, has done 52 acquisitions. How many acquisitions do you think Microsoft has done? Microsoft is an innovation company, right? They've grown by creating, by inventing.
7.
Over 200.
What?
Over 200.
They just acquire smaller computer companies, smaller.
LinkedIn. They bought LinkedIn. They bought
did
Skype.
they?
They bought. Like the whole Microsoft Teams platform is built off of Skype, which they bought.
I just thought Skype kind of just went out of business.
No, they got bought by Microsoft. How do you think Apple has done?
Well, if Microsoft has done over 200, Apple, with Steve Jobs especially, since he doesn't sound like the warmest, fuzziest guy out there, I'm sure some of them were very hostile. But, well,
They've
okay.
done 100. They've done 100.
I'm surprised it wasn't. I'm surprised it wasn't 200.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah. So here's the crazy thing.
Just buy your competition.
Blackstone, which is kind of the name in private equity, right? The biggest private equity fund out there has only done 138 acquisitions. So
only
done 138. The biggest private equity acquisition shop in the world has only done 138. So Meta has done 78.
It's a lot younger, though.
Yeah, it's only been around, right? Tesla has done 9, including the fact
just starting.
A, they're just getting started, and B, Elon didn't start Tesla. He bought it.
Was it called Tesla when he bought it?
It was called Tesla when he bought it.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, he got in trouble for calling himself a founder. So, companies grow through acquisition, and big companies have gotten big through acquisition. In addition to it being the fastest way to grow market share and to acquire customers and acquire revenue, it's also the fastest way to develop infrastructure, to develop strategic solutions. A lot of what, if you look at like Microsoft, Apple, Meta, Tesla, what they're buying is the technology that the target company has, not the market share. They're saying, they have a battery technology. Like Tesla, one of their acquisitions was that home battery
recharging system
for home energy, because that ties into the recharging stations at home for the cars. So another great strategy for acquisitions is looking upstream and downstream in your supply chain. If you're a manufacturer, buying retail outlets. If you're a retailer, buying upstream in your manufacturing. We did that in vertical integration in our export company. We bought a trucking company. We bought a customs brokerage. We bought a product inspection refrigerated warehouse facility because we wanted to vertically integrate, and rather than starting from scratch, we bought the existing company. You can buy, because the nice thing is those companies can operate as independent business units. So the trucking company wasn't dedicated to us; it served our needs, but it also served third-party needs. So it was a profit center, as well as cutting our cost, as well as doing some magic to our balance sheet by shifting our transportation cost from cost of goods sold to essentially depreciation and interest when you consolidate everything. So it changed the complexion of our balance sheet.
So you said five key success factors, and I got three of them. What were those?
Planning and execution,
Mm-hmm.
uh, conducting due diligence, cultural issues.
Mm-hmm.
Let me look at my list here on the other screen. Identifying, screening, and prioritizing the target, and developing a M&A strategy early.
So early, as in before you actually make the purchase, right?
Oh, but yes, definitely early as in before you make the purchase, but also early in the life of the company. You know, you can when you do multiple acquisitions, we've all seen that hockey stick growth curve of revenue and profitability, and we all want to live that hockey stick growth curve. It's really hard to get that compounded logarithmic curve purely from organic growth.
So I've noticed.
But through acquisitions, you can. So early on, saying, okay, we're gonna dedicate, a portion of our free cash flow, a portion of our energy, a portion of our efforts to creating those compound steps through acquisition early leads to much bigger success to the company. So you all know how to get in touch with Andrew. Andrew and I talk at least daily, if not more often. So if y'all have more questions, want to have a further conversation about any of this, something you wake up at 3:00 to go to the bathroom and a thought comes to you, text those to Andrew and he'll ping me about 9 with them.
In other words, wake him up, don't wake you up. Got it. don't text Andrew. Call David.
Yes.
David.
Afternoon.
Wait, David, are you sleeping? Were you asleep? Sorry. Right.
Right. Good night. Great meeting y'all.